All right, lost track of time there. We're shirtless and dripping sweat, been watering the garden, hanging up solar lights, and here we are. We're just gonna roll with it. I can slide on the back of my chair with dripping sweat. It's not good, but it's good enough. All right, thanks for joining us. We got a holiday, Monday. Stock markets are closed here. We got Juneteenth, and we have a bounce underway in the cryptocurrency space, and we're going to check in on that bounce and see how significant it is. Is it a dead cat bounce? Is that the bottom? How am I trading this current setup? These are all questions that we're going to look at. We're going to look at a few altcoins, and then I will check in with all of you in the chat and see what you are looking at and things like that. So S&P 500, daily bounce is underway. We just broke a little resistance level. Futures have been trading since last night, and we're just seeing a little bit of upside. So essentially, not seeing downside is what matters most at this point in time as bulls try and get a little bit of confidence. But we know that Tuesday, when the bell rings tomorrow, we're going to see what real volume is doing and get a little bit better of a picture. But what I'm keeping an eye out for is the potential that this daily bear flag that already confirmed on Thursday lacks follow through and shows us some bear exhaustion. And we've seen this in the past. This was a bear flag that confirmed with no real follow through, and then that marked a weekly bounce. So what I'm watching for are signs that bears are exhausted and a weekly bounce is trying to take shape. If you want to keep it nice and simple, because a lot of what I just said is based on observation and in the moment observations that I'm going to be making tomorrow morning and watching the bull volume and things like that. If you want to keep it simple, you just look at whether you're looking at the NASDAQ or the S&P 500. These charts are pretty much the same at this point, but you're looking at the high of Wednesday, the FOMC day. And going to this S&P 500 futures, we can see that we're still a bit under that level. So regardless of whether or not the bear flag follows through, I can say that if we don't break 38.38, the bulls are doing nothing to go on offense. Bulls have to go on offense for a weekly bounce to be underway. Same as the cryptocurrency space, which we're going to look at in just a moment. And so if we don't break this daily lower high, the daily lower highs continue and we'll have no offense. So that's the key resistance level that I'm looking at. I'm going to be watching all of our major sectors because we saw some notable rotation going on, quad witching this past Friday. I pointed out how money was leaving energy, money was going into some growth names, the biotech sector standing out in a significant way. And what matters to me there is these names that are potentially, and I say potentially because I need a lot more information, but these names like the biotech sector, which I would categorize as growth names, you look at the monthly chart, they've been dropping for 16 months. When did Bitcoin top? 2, 4, 6, 8 months ago. So not dropping nearly as long. But essentially what I'm looking for are signs that money is moving from places like the energy sector that has been going up for 18 months or however long it's been. Utilities were going up slow and steady for 18 months. We're seeing a big sell-off in those names that have been stronger. And I'm watching to see, does that mean money's going to leave the market? Or is that money going to rotate to the names that have been more beat up? The solar sector, also in growth, is holding on way better. It's a nice weekly equilibrium. So there's a couple places in growth that topped out long ago that are starting to see some signs of relative strength. So that's where I stand on the bigger picture, broader stock market. Let's now zoom into Bitcoin. So we saw over the weekend a flush. And we got to a point where we could say, or I could say, this bounce is going to take place one of two ways. We're either going to see a falling wedge. If this is a slow grind down, it will eventually be a falling wedge to lead to a daily bounce. Or we're going to see things accelerate to the downside and align with what I need to see to play a bounce. And as I've talked about in recent videos, and as I talk about on the YouTube video that's on our YouTube channel, how I play crypto breakdowns, I talk about I need all of my time frames oversold. I know what the weekly is, I know what the daily is, and yesterday is when we saw 4-hour, hourly, 15-minute, 5-minute, all getting crushed as well. And so if I look at the hourly RSI and the 4-hour RSI at our bottom, again, it was real beat up down around the teens. It was also real beat up back here, and that's when I initially played a little Ethereum bounce, just a small amount, and I kept a small amount of that Ethereum bounce. When we get to Ethereum, I'll talk about my whole position and trade game plan. But that leg down over the weekend had me say, okay, this looks enough like capitulation in terms of I am okay and comfortable starting to put the capital to work that's just been sitting there stagnant. My capital hasn't been doing much of anything in the crypto space for the last month. So if there's ever a time to be buying fear, when we're oversold on every single time frame, 5, 15, hourly, 4-hour, 12-hour, daily, weekly, with the shorter term time frames approaching the teens, that's when I'm comfortable starting to get more aggressive scaling in. So again, we saw the 4-hour, the hourly, all in the teens. And so I was scaling into Ethereum there. The bounce is now clearly underway. We saw a big hourly move. We held the low and now higher highs. It looks like a temporary top to me. This was a rising wedge. I thought yesterday was going to be a rising wedge here. And we did end up getting a little bit of a pullback from that spot where I was looking at. I was maybe 15, 20 minutes too early. But we got this to set a 4-hour higher low. We could see it was a little 4-hour bull flag overnight. But again, the bull breaks just kept lacking follow through, which tells us we're due for some bigger picture consolidation. And here we just double topped at 21,000. And again, bears just waiting for their chance to have a little turn here. And they've now got it. This was a little bit of another little rising wedge. Again, anytime you see the bull breaks lacking follow through, it shows bull exhaustion. We also had the RSI on the hourly unable to get above 70. We know that is often a short signal. It did in many altcoins, signaling a temporary top. But what we have now is 4-hour consolidation underway again. I personally, it's nice and clear on the 4-hour, these little higher lows. Last one being 19.6. I personally am finding a nice clarity on the 12-hour as well. And here we are rejecting from 12-hour EMA 12. And I know we will have to confirm a 12-hour uptrend for the first time. When's the last time we saw a 12-hour higher low and higher high? And the answer is all the way back here. This little bounce attempt, granted it had no follow through, but it hasn't happened since mid-May, so over a month. So what I'm watching for now is, can we confirm a 12-hour trend change to keep this bounce going? If we cannot, it's a daily bear flag and a very weak bounce. And if we do, then the daily bounce is going to get some more follow through, and I'll then be watching the daily 12 EMA resistance as a short-term target. So at this point in time, I am now more cautious because every single RSI time frame that I was interested in is cooling off. The 12-hour is not oversold. The daily has bounced all the way back to 28. The 4-hour is not. The hourly is not. So everything has cooled off. The weekly has not cooled off. I personally will be holding some position until a weekly bounce gets going. And again, in just a moment, I'll talk in depth about my trade game plan. But weekly RSI still crushed, and the drop that we've seen over the last few months definitely still has me interested in a bigger perspective bounce, which has me hold on to a core position. I'm trading around that core. I'm dropping it down and selling into this bounce because altcoins are bouncing 30, 40% or more. And in a downtrend, if I'm playing counter trend, I'm absolutely taking profit into that move, lowering my position size, but not getting rid of everything. So I am looking for a bounce on the weekly time frame. And if I go back and look historically, another reason for this is if I look at historically bear volume climaxes, look at the volume. So we can say this is a potential volume climax candle, looking historically at how they have formed in the past. And I'm looking at other examples, and I see one here. And I can say, okay, that was an inside bar as a result. And then I can look back here and say, man, this wasn't very notable, but there was a little bit of a volume spike before a few week bounce. I look back here. That's a volume climax for the bears, multiple inside bars. So I'm looking back at all these instances where we had a bear volume climax-like candle. If we go all the way back to the CVID dump, same thing. It was a bear volume climax, inside bar, and then some bounce follow through. My point is, for the most part, the worst case scenario, here's another one. The worst case scenario is an inside bar the next following week. Doesn't mean it's a sure thing, but I'm watching for an inside bar to form this week. And we got 6 more days to go, and it's a very wide range that we're trading within from the previous candle. So that's what I'm keeping an eye on. And what is going to be key for me is bounce retracement size, determining whether this is a bear flag or not. So here, we've got a bear flag right now on the daily time frame. If we do not confirm a 12-hour trend change, or if we confirm it with zero follow through, it will remain a possible and likely bear flag. If we confirm a 12-hour trend change with follow through and we get up over daily EMA 12 resistance, that's when the daily bear flag becomes a lot less likely for me. So the next 2-3 days are going to be critical in terms of how much bounce follow through do we see from here. And also zooming into little characteristics. So what I mean by that? Well, how aggressive are bulls buying dips? Does 5-minute RSI mark higher lows? Back here it did. Our 4-hour higher low was marked by 5-minute RSI getting oversold. That's a good sign. That shows bulls buying the dip. Here we have 5-minute oversold again. Can bulls turn around and see some multiple hours of upside from here? Essentially what I'm looking for is, does 5-minute oversold mark local bottoms? Or does it mark a temporary bottom and then continuation to the downside? All right, dominance chart, let's check in there. So dominance chart has been weaker, and we saw money obviously leaving the crypto space, altcoins trading sideways while Bitcoin kept dropping down. Dominance dropped in that instance, and now here we have still continued weakness, and this is showing us that altcoins are bouncing more significantly than Bitcoin, which is not surprising. Dropping harder, actually not dropping harder. They dropped less significantly in the last final days before that bottom was hit, and they are now dropping, or I should say bouncing harder on this move. So, one more look at the NASDAQ, or the Bitcoin divided by the NASDAQ to show relative strength or weakness. And tomorrow is going to be key for me. When real money is trading the stock market world, does Bitcoin remain much weaker than the stock market, or do we start to see some relative strength comparative to it? If this bounce is going to be for real and mark any kind of longer term bottom, or even mark a multiple week bottom on Bitcoin, I have to see this chart showing me some strength and some confidence. I have to see some relative strength against the stock market. If we don't, I trust this bounce way less. So on to Ethereum. I've been choosing Ethereum to focus a little bit more on, and just looking for the bigger volatility essentially. And yes, there's definitely altcoins that have even more volatility than Ethereum, but essentially a little bit of Bitcoin focus, a little bit of Ethereum focus. I will branch out eventually, but if I'm not full on 100% in the zone trading, I'm not branching out to too many altcoins. And there are people right now that are dedicating a lot of their weekend to trading this bounce, and they are in a bunch of different altcoins. But I knew that I didn't want to do that. So I'm just playing it a little bit more simple and just taking ETH as my altcoin, knowing that if there is a meaningful bounce, ETH, BTC will be bouncing as well. So Ethereum, the way that I traded this is I started an initial position down at around 1,200 and sold a little bit into a bounce. And I think I pointed out on Twitter there was a bear flag in here. I think it was this one that I pointed out, because we had the hourly trend change with zero follow through. And so I sold a third of my position, maybe 1216 to 1250s on that move with no follow through there. And so I had a position that was a small starter, but around 1,200. In hindsight, I wish I didn't have that because I would have gone more aggressive under 1,000. But I knew that I wanted just an initial starter position because of what the weekly was showing me in terms of just how smashed it was. So from there, I knew that when 1,000 broke and when 20,000 broke on Bitcoin, I was going to be going more aggressive on this bounce trade. Not necessarily right when it happens, but that was a signal for me to look for the capitulation type of temporary bottom. And so once we started this hourly free fall, and again, once that hourly RSI is approaching single digits on Ethereum, knowing that all those longer term RSI levels are crushed as well. And again, I've talked recently, I did the video, the last crypto video that I did was the RSI lessons and how I use it. I say I do not care about bull RSI, or I should say I do not care about oversold RSI levels unless we are at historical lows. And because of where the weekly and the daily and the hourly were all lining up, that's when I start to care about the RSI. Everything's got to be crushed. And so it was. And so I had some fills. Again, I got my little starter at, let's just call it 1,200 for easy math. And then I doubled my position size at 961. And then I tripled my position size at 885. And those were a couple orders that I placed in advance because I was out doing yard work or whatever I was doing over the weekend. And just knowing if these levels hit while I'm away from the computer over the next 3 hours, I know that the hourly RSI will be approaching single digits, and I'm very comfortable making those entries. So in the end, with those 3 positions, I think I had, I don't have my sheet anymore, but I had a sheet here where I was keeping track of my average. My initial average was, first I got it down to 1140, then it was down to 1070, and I did a little bit of trading. So this is what I'm talking about keeping a core, but then trading. I traded this initial bounce, and I sold, so I got 961, 885. I sold half at, I'm not gonna remember all my numbers exactly. I think I sold a third of my position at 921. I reloaded it at 901. I sold it again at 965. And so then I was down to 2/3 of my position. But what that allowed for was to drop my break even now down to 1039 or something like that. So just continually dropping my core break even by locking in short-term flips on that initial bounce. And that was just me being protective. The only reason I didn't go real aggressive is the liquidation that was looming. And I wasn't necessarily certain that was going to happen, but I was aware that, okay, I don't want to put myself in an anomaly trade where we see a 1 in 200 scenario and the price drops 20% in a 1-hour candle because of liquidations taking place. So in the end, I probably had maybe 20 to 22% of my account in this Ethereum trade. And again, in a more aggressive environment, if I were more aggressive, I would have easily gone 50, 60% plus. But just honestly not wanting to, it would be giving away my weekend. If I'm gonna use significant size, I am giving my weekend to the computer and to this chair, and I just don't want to do that anymore. And so for me, it will always be the more conservative route in that scenario. So now where do I stand? I'm down to my core because I took some profit. Yesterday I posted about a little rising wedge that was forming here. Took some profit in the 1120s or 1130s and was interested in looking for an entry on a 4-hour high or low and watching for 15-minute oversold conditions. And we got right above 15-minute oversold to mark the 4-hour high or low, but I was sleeping, so I did not reload any of my position there. So I'm only in my core. And again, my core is a play for this weekly stair-step pattern breaking. We have seen a lower high every single week for 3 months in a row. Well, including this candle, which is 6 days to go. But that would be 12 candles in a row. That is extreme enough where I am perfectly fine establishing a core for the weekly bounce. What if we drop lower? What if I have my core and we drop lower? I'll just do exactly what I did. I will scale into extremes. I will scale out into a bounce. I'll just keep dropping my average core. Right now, the average for the position I have, because of what I have sold, is under 879. So if we drop to lower lows, we'll be approaching my break even on this bigger picture trade. But I want a larger position size. My average is only that low because I have scaled out maybe, 65% of my position at this point. So I want to average up. I want to average up for the position that I have, and I'm waiting for a 12-hour high or low to do so. And essentially what I would be hoping for would be an Ethereum inverse head and shoulders, where anything under 1257 is a 12-hour lower high. If we form it and pull back, I look for an entry for a 12-hour high or low, and then we need to confirm the 12-hour trend change for the daily bounce to see any follow through. So I will be looking to add back a position, potentially hourly oversold conditions. Maybe if we drop down, if this is a 4-hour head and shoulders, I have no idea how this is going to play out into tomorrow, but if we were to lose the 4-hour high or lows, that tells me, okay, I'm now getting ready for my 12-hour high or low play. Maybe it's hourly oversold conditions. I scale into a couple positions for that 12-hour high or low. It remains to be seen. I don't often put bids in advance because I don't know how the price gets there. There's a lot of things I don't know. How is the broader market going to trade tomorrow? What is the bear volume going to look like when we see 12-hour consolidation? How do the bulls respond to 5 and 15-minute oversold conditions from here? These are things that I'm going to learn over the next couple of days that are going to influence where I'm looking to grab that 12-hour high or low. So not having the answers there, I can't just say, well, 1020 looks good because I don't have that information yet. So I am patiently waiting to add back on a 12-hour high or low for further bounce follow through. I have the core that I will hold into a weekly lower high. Rough visual target here. If you're looking at this weekly chart, I would say a weak bounce is 1600. That's a bear flag weekly bounce. if we get to 1600. And so that's still what, 40% from where we stand? Which is why I am keeping a core. ETH BTC has to break this daily range bullish. I consider this a double top. So I'm viewing this as a low, high of the bounce, higher low, double top. Daily EMA 12 has been resistance for a month and a half, 2 months, nope, month and a week, 5 weeks. Need to see this break bullish because if my thesis is going to be correct, looking for a weekly bounce now, this ETH BTC pairing needs to see a weekly bounce as well. And it's a lot closer to getting this weekly bounce going. We're testing the high of last week. ETH is nowhere near testing the high of last week. So if I'm going to stick with ETH being my horse for the weekly oversold bounce that I'm looking for, I have to see that ETH BTC pairing continually convince me, yeah, being an ETH is fine because ETH BTC is bouncing as well and leading the way up. So at this point, I'm not looking to take any profit on my core position unless we head up towards 1600, which I'm not holding my breath for anytime soon. I will look to add on 12-hour consolidation. I am absolutely open to the possibility that we can drop to a lower low and confirm a daily bear flag. I don't feel that's the most likely scenario, but if we open tomorrow and the broader stock market hits fresh lows, the probability needle for me that this is a daily bear flag, if probability right now for me is a 35% chance, if stocks hit a fresh low tomorrow, that probability is going to jack up to 50% plus. So it's absolutely that's why I'm mostly cashed back again, because I've got my core and I am remaining protective and conservative, where even if we do drop to another lower low, no biggie whatsoever. I'm very confident in my ability to trade the short-term moves to keep my core average down. And again, essentially the analogy that I give on trading these bounces is I used up, maybe 3 of my 10 bullets yesterday, and now I've gotten 2 of those bullets back. So I got 9 bullets. So bring it on, bears. I'm ready for another leg down to go even more aggressive. But we'll see. All right, some altcoins that have been leading the bounce. We saw Litecoin leading initially. A lot of people saying, oh, that means the market's going to roll over. It's a completely different environment. It's not the same cycle. Litecoin was great at leading to weakness in the crypto space in a bull market when we would call it a dash to trash, where Litecoin and the weaker coins would be the last to pump before notable consolidation. But we're in a massive bear market. It held on better. It's just completely different. In those scenarios, it was Litecoin seeing a bull move, and then that's the top, and everything pulls back notably. Now we just have Litecoin trading sideways, while Ethereum and Bitcoin drop to fresh, significant lower lows. You could speculate that liquidations in Bitcoin and Ethereum triggering led to that, and we didn't have the same liquidations in Litecoin, so it traded sideways and was positioned much better for this bounce to get going. I mean, technically, Litecoin's in a daily uptrend. That's a little higher low and a higher high. We could see the weekly volume. Again, look at that weekly volume. If that is not climax volume, I will be really surprised. The last time we've had any kind of comparable volume was our climax top. So I'm watching for the potential of a climax bottom. But LTC BTC must confirm a daily trend change. When we see this stair-step pattern drop of a higher low every single daily candle, if we see continuation from there, it will be very notable to me. If we don't, it'll be another one of our weekly pump and fades, which we've seen plenty of those over the last year. It's a very notable bounce. If we lose momentum once the higher lows are lost and we just give back 60% plus, nothing different. But confirm that trend change with higher highs, and it will be very notable. Other than that, the more beat up coins to the downside, seeing bigger percentage bounces, that's not surprising. That happens many times in many kinds of markets. And we had this ape 4-hour falling wedge break bull. And again, holding the low. You can differentiate altcoins right now, names that dropped to clear lower lows and names that held the lows. And we'll just run through the list real quick and get that differentiation. But we had a really nice ape bounce, and we went from $3 up to $4.82. So that is a, 60% bounce? 60% for ape. It dropped way more on the way down. If you were too early trying to play that bounce, you got punished in a big way. But if you're not too early and if you're on time, the names that drop the hardest generally have the bigger bounces. And aside from Ape, the other one was GMT. They both led the way down due to their lack of previous price history, being new kids on the block recently. But again, look at these falling wedges, double bottoms, held support, 55 cents up to 85 cents, another 60% move or so. So let's just look real quick on the 4-hour time frame and go down the list. So Ape held the low. Another thing on Ape, look at these 5-minute RSI levels. This is showing aggressive dip buying. The 5-minute RSI hits 30 and then bounces start. And granted, we did drop to another little lower low there, but the RSI is not dipping below 30. And it's marking these higher lows. That's what every bull wants to see. Every bull wants to see 5, 15-minute, hourly, see all of these oversold conditions aggressively bought to continue to put pressure on shorts and to show us bulls are buying the dips now that we have some confidence. So we had all the fear headlines, right? We've been having weeks and weeks of fear headlines, and we know the risk of liquidation, blah, blah, blah. Bullish headlines to be looking for. We already know that Binance bought 2 billion of Bitcoin. That's almost like a little bit of a safety net. The market's going to look at that and say, okay, we got some big players that have our back. Elon maybe used up all his buying power. Michael Saylor used up all his buying power. But there are still those with a whole bunch of capital where it's in their best interest for this space not to fall apart. So Binance stepping in. I mean, it's almost, to a certain degree, the Fed stepping in and trying to help out the stock market, looking back at the CVID dump or wherever else. It's different, obviously, but it's that having someone with big capital at your back that's on the Bulls team. So that's the case with Binance. There's rumors about, what's his name, Sam, FTX, bailing out some companies. That's speculation at this point, as far as I know. So these would be, like, if that were to be confirmed, that's a bullish headline. Because again, it's, okay, someone's in our corner, someone's helping out, and that gives a little bit more confidence into the market. So that's something to keep an eye out for as well. But if we just go down the list real quick, we're going to look at the Trader Pro here in a minute too, because it's been giving us some signals. So AVAX dropped to a fresh lower low, ICP, fresh lower low, GMT had the double bottom. So again, just a little bit of a difference if you've got that double bottom to work off of versus coming off of fresh lows. So that's just one way to differentiate names. Mana had fresh lows. Mana is still in a bigger picture, potential falling wedge. If we set a 12-hour lower high here, it will continue to shape up. So if we set the 12-hour lower high and pull back, an aggressive bull is going to look for a 12-hour higher low entry and hope that eventually breaks bullish. So some things that we're looking at on Trader Pro. Number one, weekly super stack. I don't think this is ever fired in terms of a signal. We've never been beat up enough to have time frames on weekly, daily, 4-hour, hourly, 15-minute, 5-minute, all crushed enough. And again, the super stack is essentially taking my criteria for playing these bounce trades in the face of a ton of bear momentum and putting it into robotic form, having a bot tell us when that is happening. So it was funny, as this alert was just firing off, I posted in the chat room, all right, now I'm getting interested. Alert fires a few minutes later, which was just a nice example of this alert is essentially my brain on the screen. So it triggered under 1,000. We don't have anywhere near enough information to know if this is going to be an alert that works out really well or signals too early and drops to lower lows. But it's definitely notable to me that it fired on this climax drop. Also, bears still have signals to be looking at. Hourly, first overbought conditions. So again, we used the back burner on the way down, and granted this didn't mark the top of the bounce, but hourly overbought conditions on Ethereum for the first time after a massive bear move fired in the 1130s, and very shortly after we then pulled back 8%. So if I go bear on that signal, or if I take profit on that signal, I'm a happy camper because it allows for profit. So if I'm a bear and I enter, I take some profit into the significant pullback. Maybe I stop out on the higher high. Granted, it didn't have any follow through, but it at least allows me to position on that size of a drop for the potential of looking for a temporary bounce high. And again, it was another example where I didn't have this alert up, but this is where I was taking profit on my Ethereum bounce trade up at that level in the 1130s or so, 1120s. So still very useful bear signals on back burners. And it'll be the same thing. If this bounce does keep going, I will be taking more profit if the 4-hour RSI were to get up towards 70. Hopefully I'll have a larger position by then, entering on a 12-hour higher low. All right. I'm done. What you talking about? Yeah, I saw that was Soul News. So again, Soul, I look at the volume, and it's hard to imagine that is not a weekly climax. I know it's not a sure thing, but probability-wise, that looks like a temporary bottom to me to get a weekly bounce going. Lower high every week. That pattern is on the verge of breaking. It already broke. So that's notable. Weekly stair-step pattern has broken for the first time in months. 4-hour uptrend. Ooh, we got the 12-hour uptrend too. So it definitely looks a lot different for that reason. This almost looks like, not exactly how it played out, but I'm viewing what Bitcoin and Ethereum are doing right now is this move. And I need the higher low and higher high to happen. It's already happened on Sol. So this daily bounce is a bit more developed. Similar to Litecoin. It held the low, it fended off the bear flag, and then broke resistance. If we do not see follow through, it's a potential weekly bear flag. So obviously Sol bulls want to see Bitcoin confirm a 12-hour trend change and try and do the same thing. Resistance after 3690, 3793. But really the major levels, 42, 44s, those lower highs on the way down. We are over daily EMA 12 right now. We'll see where we close, but we're just getting over it for the first time in a very, very, very long time. We were under that EMA resistance for 2 months. So a shift is taking place. We just have to ensure follow through. Anything above 3173 is a 4-hour higher low. LTC, BTC, I know it's bouncing. It looks just like Litecoin. It's because it is Litecoin. So BTC, so similar daily move, not as extreme, but a big one. Certainly the most notable one in weeks. When did we break the stair-step pattern on the BTC pairing? And your answer is broke bull on June 15th. What was happening June 15th? Just the initial little bounce. So the BTC pairing gave a signal to gain a little bit of confidence long before the US dollar pairing broke its weekly stair-step drop. And again, as people are talking about in the chat room here, you definitely have to be aware of this liquidation situation. I have not been following it in depth. I've been aware of it, but the votes that they're doing and all that, definitely something to be paying attention to. But for now, not at risk of being liquidated, as Bitcoin found a temporary bottom just in the nick of time, and a notable bounce is underway. Again, if we're going to drop back to 25 at this point, what do we need? A 30% drop from here? From the high of the bounce at this point, we would need a 30% drop to see fresh lows. Again, it can happen. It's just not the most likely scenario for me. If I see some green to start the week in the stock market, I'm going to be a lot more confident in a crypto weekly bounce. If we get up to 1,000 likes, we'll do a naked show. All right. Trying to scroll here and catch up. I have a video shirt. I don't wear clothes in the summer. And so I have a YouTube shirt next to my computer. And that's why oftentimes it's the same shirt because I wear it for 20 minutes and then take it off as soon as I'm done. Outside work has been watering and hanging solar lights. Did a bunch of staining of that big trellis yesterday with Jungle Funk. When would I add to long-term no touch? Never. I have all the long-term no touch I want. I am not going to add any more ever. ADA BTC, bounce underway. Significant daily bounce. We already got a significant weekly bounce underway here. So now we're watching, can we get a weekly trend change for the first time since all-time highs? And we certainly have space. I'm just viewing this as drop, bounce, drop, and now a bounce. Anything under 2731 I would consider a lower high. But we are well off that bottom and watching to see, can we confirm a weekly trend change for a very notable shift if that were to take place. ADA had a falling wedge as well. Double bottom down at 40 cents, holding 40 cents. Got to get over 69 cents to break these weekly lower highs that have been forming for a very long time. So we've been leveling out sideways a lot longer while crypto keeps dropping to lower lows. Can this defense and this support that's being built tilt the scales between supply and demand to then turn into offense? Is the question that we have for the coming weeks. How do you get away from dangerous mindset of not taking profits because you're still so far from portfolio all-time highs? You have to. I don't know. You have to. You can't just hold and hope, because holding and hoping is probably what got you very far from being at portfolio near all-time highs. Also, bear opportunity. There's going to be bear opportunity as well. If everything goes according to plan and we get these weekly bounces of 30, 40, 50% plus, bears are going to have a really great entry for weekly lower highs, and we'll look for bears to then get 20, 30% plus on weekly consolidation. So there is going to be a significant amount of opportunity in both directions still. It's just a question of where is there going to be more opportunity. But it also depends on your experience. If you haven't proven success to yourself, and if you don't have that confidence in trading around these moves, then maybe it's not a good idea to be trying to short-term flip like I do, and maybe using just bigger picture time frames, trade based off of the 12-hour time frame at a minimum as the shortest term time frame maybe. Scrolling down. How should I view my W Luna held as a loss on Coinbase as a tax write-off? You can offset capital gains with it. You can offset $3,000 of income a year with it. Can I touch more on my Twitter post about the dip from Bitcoin all-time high? All I was doing was comparing the last time around. Everybody, oh, crypto, oh my God, it's dropping so much. Meanwhile, it is not as bearish as 2018. 2018 dropped more over a longer period of time. If this drop were going to be the same percentage drop as 2018, we would drop down to under 11,000. Which means from the low that we just saw, we would need to drop another, what, 40%? That would be the same magnitude. So this is not, this isn't even, there we go. From the low, we would need another 37% to see 2018 percentage drop. Are candle closes or the wicks more important than considering highs and lows? It's the wicks for trend. Concrete price levels. Can you trade 100 times leverage in 5-minute time frames? I've never attempted it. I certainly wouldn't suggest doing so. What is my lean on the stock market? It's bearish as long as there's daily lower highs, but I'm recognizing the bear flag to end last week lacked follow through. So if we're green tomorrow, I'm going to be watching for signs that a weekly bounce is trying to take shape. If we're red tomorrow, full bear control. Can I do a video on taxation? Nope, I am not a tax expert. You don't want people that aren't experts to be giving you information. And they do it all the time. In the social media world. If I were to say, sure, I'll do a video on trading crypto options, which I don't do, or I'll do a video on taxation, which I pay someone to do for me, big red flag. One of the early trading groups that I left because the individual didn't like I was answering everybody's questions instead of directing them to his courses was a reason being this individual did not trade options. I poked him a bunch like, hey, you should check out options. Your technical analysis will work just fine for them. They're essentially penny stocks if you're trading the weekly ones, trading off of, Apple and these liquid names moves. Okay, he checked it out. And 2 months later, he puts out a course on trading options. It's like, man, you have not nearly enough experience to be putting out that course. It was a huge turnoff for me. What time frame do I use to see a 12-hour bounce beginning? I would say an hourly trend change, generally speaking. It is definitely possible. I just don't think it's most likely to drop without a weekly bounce. Again, if you bounce on the weekly for a couple weeks, cool off the RSI, you can absolutely drop to lower lows and see significant follow through. I mean, look what we just did last time. But that bounce from 25 to 32 was also 25 to 30% opportunity. And more so in alts. I'm just looking for the same thing. I'm not looking for generational bottom. I'm not looking for any of that. I'm looking for a weekly bounce into a lower high. That's it. Take it a couple weeks at a time. Do I think I can get an idea of red or green by observing pre-market? I mean, the technical setup of the futures chart definitely gives us some insight. Whether we're right under resistance heading into the open in a downtrend, or whether we are confirming an hourly uptrend into the open, those are two very different scenarios. Didn't we already do link? Link's nice and clear on the daily. If I don't have a position, I want a lower high compared to 751, and I want this daily chart to get nice and tight. And I would be looking for the 12-hour higher low. What is the most likely scenario here? If we see a little bit more weakness, it's a 12-hour equilibrium. We're going to scout the higher low, and then of course we have to break bull if we're going to get any kind of meaningful bounce going. But it's a nice and very clear wide range. And bears are going to top fish 751 here, looking for that 12-hour consolidation. What's up, Milto? Do I only chart with TradingView? 90%. I mean, I got my Fidelity screen up when I'm trading stocks, and that has a chart on it, but its functionality sucks. But at least allows me to see one time frame and volume, and then I maneuver the other time frames on my other screen. I am 34, been trading coming up on 12 years. Link BTC chart is definitely going up. I know that without looking. Weekly bounce clearly underway. Again, have to change the character of this chart. When is the last time we saw a confirmed weekly uptrend? It hasn't happened in almost a year. So anything under 394 is just a lower high, but we've got a whole bunch of space to try and set up a longer term trend change, which we'll definitely be watching for. It is definitely a meaningful bounce over the last 2 weeks. All right, I'm done. I hope you all have a great Monday. And I will see you later this week when we check in on this bounce. One more look at the short-term time frames. Is Bitcoin seeing any kind of a temporary top? We lost the hourly higher lows. Again, watching the 4-hour uptrend. Have to lose the 4-hour uptrend if we are going to see 12-hour consolidation underway. There's an uptrend support line right now being tested. If we were to bounce from here, I'd be watching this. And this would have to break if 12-hour consolidation is going to be underway. One other scenario, stock market is red tomorrow, 12-hour consolidation underway for crypto. In response to that, with correlation, set that 12-hour higher low, and then a broader stock market bounce helps the 12-hour trend change confirm for Bitcoin. That's a possibility as well. So tomorrow's not, make or break, has to be green for the stock market world. Do good things. Establish those game plans. Be protective. Have to take profit into these size bounces in a bear market. Unless you're going for the home run, but in that case, have to set a stop loss. See you soon. Thanks again. There's a video on our YouTube I put out yesterday about setting up the charts the way that I do and the way that Lori does.